This cycle is getting potentially close to the end. Normally, cycles end in Q4 of the post-halving year, right? So that's coming up relatively soon. Normally, when you do get an alt season, that's usually a sign that the cycle's over, right? So by the time you get that, it usually means that the Bitcoin's bull market is over. If you look at the last few cycles, this was the fourth quarter of 2013, the fourth quarter of 2017, and then the fourth quarter of 2021. It at least stands to reason that we might have a top sometime, in the fourth quarter of the year, right? Like every cycle gives us slightly smaller returns. It's still great returns. I mean, Bitcoin, started the cycle at 15K and now it's already hit 124. But I think a lot of people in crypto are, they're so accustomed to chasing those higher gains. Bitcoin normally gets to all-time highs before altcoins do. And this cycle, proved that again, because I think Bitcoin dominance is going to get another rally here late September and through the month of October.
As crypto investors continue to speculate whether a price drop is inevitable for Bitcoin and Ethereum in the coming weeks, this mega cycle is heating up, and Benjamin Cowen remains bullish, expecting a parabolic rise in the last few months of 2025. While forced selling, leveraged bets, and the usual tug of war appear as the assets approach a huge barrier, the bigger picture tells a different story. Analysts are drawing a striking parallel, noting that Ethereum today may be in the same position Bitcoin was in 2017, when it rocketed from $1,000 into the financial spotlight as Wall Street began paying serious attention. Just as Bitcoin did then, Ethereum is now catching the eyes of institutions, hedge funds, asset managers, and major investors who view its role as extending far beyond speculation. Bitcoin, meanwhile, has been trading more like a risk asset, meaning that if the market recovers, its price is expected to surge alongside it, though uncertainty still looms. If the market remains in limbo, Bitcoin could face short-term pressure. Currently priced just under 112,300, still down over 2% in the past month. Bitcoin is benefiting from growing community buzz and adoption spreading across industries, from decentralized finance to stablecoins. Even the regulatory environment, once seen as a stumbling block, appears to be tilting in Ethereum's favor, positioning it not just as a digital currency, but as a backbone of future financial infrastructure. According to Benjamin Cowen, this is only the beginning. With Wall Street's deeper involvement and strong retail participation, Ethereum's growth story still has room to run. The real question now isn't whether Ethereum will climb higher, but how quickly it can write the next chapter in crypto history.
When you look at how cycles finish, what normally happens is you get a local top in August and then a local low in September, and then you go into the market cycle top, right? So in 2021, we set a high here, like in late August, early September. We then set the local low in late September, and then we went into the market cycle top in Q4. Same thing in 2017, right? We set a high in August, a low in September, and then the market cycle top was in Q4. Same thing in 2013, a high in August, a low in September, and then the market cycle top in Q4. And so when you look at this cycle, you actually can see that it's the same thing, right? I mean, you have a high in August, a low in September, and there's a good chance the low for September is already in. If it's not, then, I mean, it could go a little bit lower and then potentially going up into whatever, the final top is. I mean, I think it would be prudent as an investor to at least entertain the idea that 2026 we'll see Bitcoin retracing some, and then hopefully just gearing up for another good year in 2027. It's just kind of the way the cycles worked, and I still subscribe to the idea if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. So even if Bitcoin were to go up to like 150K, a lot of retail investors aren't going to care because they don't actually own Bitcoin, right? They want to see their altcoins go up. I think one of the things that you're watching right now, or that's worth watching, is Ethereum. Because what I've sort of thought for a while is that in order to get an alt season, like what people remember as alt season back in like late 2017, late 2021, is you need Ethereum to really durably break to new all-time highs, right? I think that's what you need. And I said for a while that the path for Ethereum to get there this cycle is that, it would first go to its lower regression band, right, which it did back in April. Then it would go to new all-time highs. But on the first attempt of the all-time highs, it would actually get rejected. And I think that's what's causing those alt-season calls to remain premature, is because you're still not looking at an Ethereum that is sustaining new all-time highs.
Right.
You could still see Ethereum wick above 5K, but I still am a believer in the idea that you need Ethereum to sort of check back in, kind of like it did over here in June, right? You see how it checked back in with it, and then it just exploded higher. I think ultimately that's what's going to happen for Ethereum, is at some point over the next, say, 3 to 4 weeks, and then go into its own rally into the market cycle top. And by the way, the same thing's happened every cycle, right? I mean, look at 2021, Ethereum checked in with that moving average in September, late September, early October. Same thing in 2017. Also the same thing in 2020 in September. So that doesn't mean that Bitcoin necessarily has to get as large of a correction. I think Bitcoin already did get a large correction. I mean, look at Bitcoin. It already dropped to its 20-week moving average, right? It already dropped down there. But I think you're going to see Ethereum eventually do the same thing. I think it's going to scare some people. And then hopefully after that, it can get a stronger rally out of that. You know, when you look at Bitcoin dominance, normally it reverses course in the month of September, right? So like if you look at like September 2020, dominance was at the same level, and then it went up into Q4. If you look at September of 2017, dominance also bottomed in September and then went up into Q4. And so that's the reason why I still think the alt season calls are premature, because I think Bitcoin dominance is going to get another rally here late September and through the month of October. And so, you know, if we get an alt season this cycle, my guess is that it won't happen until after October, if we're going to get one, right? I think it'll be after October, because again, I don't think you can get an alt season without a durable all-time high by Ethereum. And I don't think you're going to get a durable all-time high for Ethereum until, you know, October, right? So what you'll notice is in October, Bitcoin dominance normally goes up, right? So like in 2024, dominance went up 5%. 2023, dominance went up 8%. So the average move of Bitcoin dominance in October is about 5%. In fact, dominance tends to go up the most in the month of October.
Okay. That's November, then it's red, right?
It's November that it typically is red.
Okay.
So I'm looking for dominance to, you know, really concretely form a low in September, and the low could very well already be in for dominance, and then for it to explode higher in October, and then I could see it then falling in the month of November.
Embracing an unyielding enthusiasm for the Bitcoin realm, Benjamin Cowen confidently predicts that explosive growth is looming on the horizon. As BlackRock and many other crypto giants are doing just that, Cowen reassures that a long-expected surge awaits. By the end of 2025, there will be 1.1 billion active crypto wallets. The pace of growth is hard to comprehend, and it will be the fastest accumulation of wealth we have ever seen. This is the conclusion of a career's worth of research. And every single chart and piece of research leads to the same conclusion. Liquidity drives everything, and crypto will be the best performing asset of them all. Ethereum isn't just holding its ground, it's starting to pull ahead. As 2025 winds down, Ethereum has actually outperformed most other major crypto assets, driven by record on-chain activity, surging developer adoption, and growing institutional demand. While Bitcoin continues to anchor the market, Ethereum's momentum is signaling that it could be a real leader in this next phase, setting the stage for what analysts call its strongest run yet.
So, I mean, it's possible that certain cryptocurrencies could go up in 2026. Like, I mean, if you look at the 2017 cycle, Bitcoin topped in Q4, but Ethereum actually did not top until January of 2026. And then there were altcoins that continued to do well even through like April, you know, just like last cycle, like we saw Luna doing really, really well into 2022, but it still, I mean, it ended up, you know, we know it eventually happened, right? So it's possible that some parts of the market could do well, even into 2026, especially those that maybe didn't do as well. You know, the coins that were, you know, didn't really participate as much so far. It's possible, but I think there is a decent chance that the top will occur in 2025. If it doesn't, I'm fine with that. I mean, normally what I do is if I hold any altcoins, I at least consolidate the altcoins back to Bitcoin before the midterm year, or sometime early on in the midterm year, because even if I have to weather the Bitcoin bear market, Bitcoin normally gets to all-time highs before altcoins do. And like this cycle, proved that again. So I think people are missing a step. I think so. It was Bitcoin to ETH, right? So and when Ethereum went to its regression band back in April, that was the time to trade things in for Ethereum, because you can actually see that altcoins bled over 50% against Ethereum after Ethereum went down to $1,300, $1,400 back in April. So that was your sort of Ethereum season. Now, right now, you sort of got a taste of what an alt season might be like, where you're starting to see alts rally against Ethereum. But the only reason they're rallying against Ethereum right now is because usually after Ethereum sweeps a prior high, or not just Ethereum, just when assets sweep a prior high, they can then correct for a little bit, like a few weeks, sometimes a few months, and you're seeing alts rally against Ethereum. What I think people are missing right now, when they keep calling for alt season, I think they're missing an intermediate rotation back to Bitcoin first, right? So it was Bitcoin only basically until April, because Bitcoin dominance was just going up, right? It really went up until June, but Ethereum bottomed in April against Bitcoin. So it was basically Bitcoin only, then Bitcoin and Ethereum since April. And then I think a lot of people think it's alt season now, but I don't think it's alt season until Ethereum puts in durable all-time highs. And I don't think it's going to do that until October at the earliest, which means that we're not witnessing a rotation right now to the other majors. We're witnessing a rotation back to Bitcoin. And it should be a timely rotation, because we already saw that October is normally the best month for Bitcoin dominance, right? October is the best month. We've seen dominance bottom in September, like 5 or 6 of the years that Bitcoin that we've even tracked this stuff. So I think that rotation will likely come, but I think people are off by about 2 months on that call. I think we're going to first get a Bitcoin rotation back. That rotation will probably last us for the rest of this month, and then through all of October. And then maybe early November, but by the time you're getting to mid-November, you're probably getting that rotation you talked about. That way, especially right now, because if you're banking on Bitcoin dominance going up again, which is what I think is going to happen, it makes sense to have most of your crypto portfolio in Bitcoin, right? Because it's lower risk than alts, and it should outperform most of them for the next 6 weeks. But about 20% into ETH, because while I do think it's going to struggle against Bitcoin for maybe a few more weeks, as measured from now until the end of the cycle, Ethereum will likely outperform Bitcoin, right? As measured from now until the end, even though I expect weakness through the month of October for the ETH Bitcoin pair. So I think right now about an 80 to 20% split, Bitcoin and ETH, makes the most amount of sense. If you are going to go into altcoins right now, I would still keep it a relatively low amount, just because I see that rotation back to Bitcoin coming.
Where does all of this leave us? Ethereum has crossed $4,000, weathered short-term volatility, and is now attracting the kind of institutional attention that once catapulted Bitcoin into the mainstream. Analysts are increasingly framing this as Ethereum's 2017 Bitcoin moment, where the groundwork laid over the past decade finally meets global recognition and capital inflows. But here's what makes this cycle different. Ethereum isn't just competing as a digital currency, it's the infrastructure powering decentralized finance, stablecoins, and entire ecosystems of applications that regulators and institutions are beginning to take seriously. That combination of utility and adoption is exactly why many see $5,000 and beyond as not just a price target, but an inevitable milestone. Over the past year, Ethereum has quietly outperformed most other major crypto assets. Tom Lee and other top analysts emphasize this point. Ethereum's real growth story is still ahead of us. With Wall Street leaning in, developers innovating faster than ever, and adoption spreading across industries, Ethereum is positioned to be a defining force as we head into 2026. The bottom line: the short-term swings may grab headlines, but the long-term trajectory is unmistakable. Ethereum is evolving from a promising blockchain into a cornerstone of digital finance and technology, and if history is any guide, the breakout we're seeing now could be just the opening chapter of Ethereum's biggest run yet.